Ladies and gentlemen, there are storms that come because life is life, and then there are storms that come because alignment is missing. Not every storm is an attack. Some storms are alarms. They are signals from heaven saying, something in your order is out of place. And if you learn the discipline I'm about to speak into your spirit, storms that were assigned to break you will lose their permission to stay. God does not calm every storm immediately. Sometimes he waits to see whether you will become disciplined enough to stand in it without losing your faith, your focus, or your future. The storm is not the problem. Undisciplined living is what keeps the storm active. Many people want deliverance, but they resist discipline. They pray for peace but refuse structure. They ask God for overflow but reject order. Yet heaven responds to alignment, not desperation. When your life comes into divine order, storms recognize authority and move out of the way. There is a secret discipline of God that is not loud, not flashy, public. It is built in quiet obedience, unseen consistency, and private surrender. It is waking up when your flesh wants to sleep. It is saying no when no one is watching. It is staying faithful when results are delayed. This discipline does not shout, but it commands. Some storms are sustained because God is trying to teach you how to govern yourself. Until you master discipline, the storm becomes your teacher. The moment you learn obedience, the lesson ends. Heaven does not prolong pain without purpose. When the purpose is fulfilled, the storm must leave. You cannot rebuke what you keep feeding. You cannot pray away what your habits keep inviting. Every storm has a doorway, and most of the time, that door is disobedience disguised as comfort. But when you shut the door through discipline, the storm loses access. God is not asking you to fight harder. He is asking you to live sharper. Discipline sharpens discernment. Discipline strengthens spiritual authority. Discipline builds endurance, and endurance outlasts storms. Some of you have been praying for the storm to end, but God is saying, if you become disciplined, you won't need the storm anymore, because storms are not permanent, they are assignments. And assignments expire when the objective is complete. 2026 approaches, God is not preparing you for chaos, he is preparing you for command. This is the season where disciplined believers will walk calmly through what unsettles others. While people panic, you will be positioned. While others react, you will respond. While storms rage, you will rest. This is not about perfection. It's about consistency. Not about speed. It's about obedience. Not about noise. It's about authority. And when discipline becomes your lifestyle, heaven will trust you with peace, even in the middle of pressure. Because storms don't end when circumstances change. Storms end when you change. Not every storm is an attack. Some storms are instructions wrapped in disruption. Some seasons of pressure are not sent to destroy you, but to develop you. We are quick to assume that resistance means opposition, but often resistance is simply evidence that growth is taking place. Storms do not always arrive to push you backward. Many arrive to reposition you forward. There are moments when life becomes uncomfortable, not because something is wrong, but because something is changing. Comfort can hide stagnation. Ease can disguise immaturity. When everything feels calm, we rarely evaluate our alignment. But when the wind rises and the waves crash, we are forced to ask deeper questions about our foundations, our habits, and our faith. The storm becomes a mirror, showing us what has been built strong and what has been built shallow. An attack is meant to steal, kill, and destroy. But a storm that refines does none of those things. It exposes, it stretches, it reveals capacity, it tests endurance. It teaches you how to stand when stability is no longer external. Many people pray for storms to end, realizing that the storm is teaching them how to survive future seasons with greater authority. What feels like chaos is often training. Some storms arrive because you are growing faster than your structure can support. Expansion without discipline leads to collapse. So life applies pressure not to crush you, but to force you to reinforce what matters. Character is strengthened under pressure. Patience is learned under delay. Wisdom is gained when outcomes are uncertain. These qualities cannot be downloaded in comfort. They are forged in resistance. You assume every storm is an attack. You respond defensively. You panic. You rush. You make emotional decisions. When you understand that some storms are developmental, your posture changes. You slow down. You listen. You observe. You begin to ask, what is this season trying to teach me? That question alone shifts you from survival mode into growth mode. Storms have a way of stripping away illusions. They remove the support systems you leaned on instead of building inner strength. They reveal dependencies you didn't know you had. They expose gap between belief and practice. This exposure can feel uncomfortable, even painful, but it is not punishment, it is preparation. You cannot carry future responsibility with fragile foundation. There are storms that come because you're being promoted into greater responsibility. Before new levels of influence, visibility, or impact, life tests your resilience. Can you remain grounded when things are unstable? Can you stay disciplined when outcomes are delayed? Can you maintain integrity when pressure increases? The storm answers these questions, not with words, but with experience. Growth storms often feel unfair because they don't come with explanations. You didn't do anything wrong, yet everything feels hard. This is where many people become discouraged, assuming that difficulty means disfavor. But difficulty often signals trust. You are not being targeted, you are being trained. The pressure is not proof of abandonment, it is evidence that more is being built within you. Not every storm needs to be rebuked. Some need to be endured, some need to be studied, some need to be walked through with patience instead of panic. When you fight every storm, you exhaust yourself unnecessarily. When you learn from storms, you emerge stronger, wiser, and more prepared for what comes next. There are also storms that reveal what cannot go with you into the future. Certain mindsets, relationships, and habits cannot survive higher levels of purpose. The storm creates separation. What is weak falls away. What is unnecessary drifts off. What is essential remains. This is not loss, it is refinement. You are not losing yourself. You are shedding what no longer serves who you are becoming. Storms teach you the difference between control and trust. When conditions are calm, it is easy to believe you are in control. When uncertainty hits, you realize how much of life requires surrender. This surrender is not weakness. It is maturity. It is learning to move forward, but needing everything to make sense first. If every storm were an attack, no one would grow. But because some storms are developmental, they become turning points. They mark the end of who you were and the beginning of who you are becoming. They stretch your capacity to handle pressure without breaking your spirit. They teach you how to stand firm without becoming rigid. Eventually, you reach a place where storms no longer scare you. You recognize their sound. You understand their purpose. You know that they come and they go, but what they build within you remains. You stop asking, why is this happening to me? And start asking, what is being formed in me? Not every storm is an attack. Some are assignments. Some are classrooms. Some are bridges between one level of maturity and the next. When you stop fighting every storm and start learning from them, you discover that the very thing you feared was shaping the strength you needed all along. When the storm passes, and it always does, you don't return to who you were. You emerge clearer, steadier, and stronger. Not because the storm was easy, because it was necessary. Discipline, not prayer alone, determines how long storms last. Prayer invites divine help. Discipline determines whether that help has somewhere to stay. Many people pray passionately, yet live carelessly, wondering why the storm lingers. Prayer opens the door to heaven, but discipline builds the structure that can sustain the answer. Without discipline, prayer becomes a momentary relief instead of a lasting transformation. Storms are not always waiting for a louder prayer. Sometimes they are waiting for a changed lifestyle. You can ask for peace while feeding chaos through your habits. You can pray for clarity while refusing consistency. You can cry out for breakthrough while avoiding responsibility. Heaven responds to sincerity. Storms respond to order. When life lacks discipline, disorder keeps re-inviting what prayer tries to remove. Prayer aligns your heart. Discipline aligns your life. One without the other creates imbalance. Prayer says, I depend on God. Discipline says, I will steward what God gives. Storms often persist not because God is silent, but because we are undisciplined. The lesson remains until the behavior changes. Growth does not come from repetition of requests, it comes from obedience to correction. Many storms are sustained by patterns we refuse to confront. undisciplined speech, undisciplined time, undisciplined emotions, undisciplined choices. These become open doors. You can fast pray and declare victory, yet still entertain habits that prolong the battle. Storms recognize inconsistency. They lose strength when discipline closes access points. Discipline is not punishment, it is protection. Creates boundaries that keep peace intact. When discipline is absent, life becomes reactive. You respond emotionally instead of intentionally. You drift instead of direct. Storms thrive in reactive environments because there is no structure to resist them. Discipline brings stability. Stability shortens the lifespan of storms. Prayer can calm you in the storm, but discipline often determines when the storm ends. Without discipline, even answered prayers can be wasted. Opportunity without structure leads to collapse. Relief without reform leads to repetition. This is why some people experience the same storms in different seasons. They prayed for escape but never learned mastery. Discipline teaches you how to govern yourself when pressure rises. Storms test leadership, not just faith. They ask, can you stay consistent when emotions fluctuate? Can you maintain focus when outcomes are delayed? Can you choose restraint when stress invites reaction? Discipline answers these questions with action, not intention. Many want immediate deliverance, but discipline develops endurance. Endurance is what carries you through when prayer has already been offered, but results have not yet appeared. Discipline keeps you steady while waiting. It keeps you faithful when feelings fade. Storms often last as long as it takes for discipline to be formed. Prayer changes atmosphere. Discipline changes environment. Atmospheres shift quickly, but environments require maintenance. You can feel inspired in prayer and still return to an undisciplined routine. When that happens, the storm finds familiar conditions and stays. When discipline reshapes the environment, the storm no longer feels welcome. Discipline also trains discernment. It helps you recognize which battles require prayer and which require correction. Some storms are not spiritual attacks. They are consequences of unmanaged choices. Prayer without discipline asks God to override responsibility. Discipline partners with prayer by taking ownership of growth. As discipline increases, storms lose leverage. Chaos feeds on inconsistency, but discipline starves it. The more structured your life becomes, the less room storms have to operate. You stop being easily shaken because your foundation is no longer emotional, it is intentional. This does not mean prayer is weak. Prayer is powerful. Prayer was never meant to replace discipline. It was meant to empower it. Prayer gives vision, discipline gives execution. Prayer gives strength, discipline gives sustainability. When the two work together, storms cannot overstay their assignment. Some storms linger because they are still teaching you how to live differently. Once discipline is learned, the lesson ends. The storm no longer has purpose. It moves on because the environment has changed. Growth always shortens suffering. Discipline is choosing alignment when comfort is tempting. It is consistency when motivation is low. It is obedience when shortcuts are available. These daily choices quietly dismantle storms. You may not see immediate results, but over time, stability replaces turbulence. When discipline becomes a lifestyle, storms lose their power to intimidate. You stop panicking because you trust your process. You stop reacting because you have structure. You stop begging for relief because you are building resilience. Peace becomes less about circumstances and more about order. In the end, storms do not last forever, but their duration is influenced by how quickly discipline takes root. Prayer invites change, but discipline sustains it. And when discipline finally aligns your life, storms that once seemed endless quietly pass because there is nothing left for them to correct. God delays calm to develop authority in you. What you often interpret as silence or delay is not absence, it is intention. Calm withheld is not punishment, it is preparation. Authority is not built in comfort, and influence is not formed in ease. Authority is forged when you learn how to stand steady while everything around you is unsettled. Immediate calm would soothe your emotions. Delayed calm strengthens your character. If peace arrived too quickly, you would depend on circumstances resources instead of capacity. God is not only interested in removing pressure, He is invested in who you become under it. Calm too early produces dependency. Calm after endurance produces authority. Authority is not loud, it is not frantic, it does not rush to prove itself. Authority is the quiet confidence that comes from surviving what once intimidated you. When calm is delayed, you are forced to develop inner stability. You learn how to regulate your thoughts, manage your emotions, and make wise decisions without external reassurance. This is how authority is built, from the inside out. Many people want God to stop the storm, but God wants to teach you how to command yourself within it. Till you can govern your reactions, calm would be wasted. You would panic again the next time pressure returned. So the storm stays not to defeat you, to train you. Authority begins with self-mastery. Delayed calm exposes what you truly relied on. When familiar supports are removed, you discover whether your confidence is rooted in God or in outcomes. This exposure is uncomfortable, but it is necessary. Authority cannot rest on fragile foundations. It must be anchored in something deeper than convenience or control. God understands that authority without maturity becomes dangerous. Power without discipline leads to collapse. Influence without wisdom creates harm. So before granting peace, He develops patience. Before giving relief, He builds resilience. The delay is not denial, it is development. Calm delayed teaches you discernment. You learn the difference between urgency and importance, between emotion and instruction. In the middle of unrest, you learn how to listen instead of react. This ability to hear clearly under pressure is a hallmark of authority. Leaders who panic cannot lead. Voices that shake cannot command stability. There is a difference between surviving a storm and gaining authority from it. Survival keeps you alive. Authority changes how future storms respond to you. When calm is delayed, you are being taught how to carry yourself with composure, how to remain grounded, how to make decisions that are not driven by fear. These lessons cannot be rushed. Authority also requires endurance. Short-term peace builds comfort. Long-term pressure builds stamina. Stamina allows you to remain consistent when situations fluctuate. It allows you to stay faithful when results are delayed. It allows you to continue moving forward even when clarity is incomplete. This kind of endurance commands respect from people and from life itself. God delays calm because He is preparing you for environments where calm will be your responsibility, not a gift. There will be seasons where others look to you for stability, not sympathy. If you have never learned to stand in delayed calm, you will not know how to provide calm to others. Authority is transferable peace. Delayed calm also refines your voice. When noise surrounds you, you learn how to speak with intention. You stop wasting words. You stop reacting impulsively. You learn that authority is not in volume, but in timing. Calm finally comes. Your words carry weight because they were shaped in pressure. Some storms remain because they are shaping your leadership capacity. You are learning how to lead yourself before leading others. You are learning how to manage uncertainty without becoming unstable. You are learning how to trust without needing immediate reassurance. These lessons prepare you for higher responsibility. Calm delayed teaches humility. It reminds you that you cannot control everything and you do not need to. Authority that is rooted in humility is steady, not oppressive. It listens, it waits, discerns. Pride demands instant relief. Humility submits to process. When calm is delayed, you learn how to operate without clarity. You move forward by principle instead of emotion. You choose obedience over understanding. This is where authority deepens. Anyone can act when everything makes sense. Authority is revealed when you act faithfully without full answers. Eventually, calm does come. But when it does, you are not the same person who asked for it. You are stronger, wiser, more grounded. The storm did not just pass, it imparted something. You now carry authority that cannot be shaken easily. Future storms recognize this and lose their power to intimidate. God delays calm to develop authority in you because authority is more valuable than comfort. Comfort fades, authority remains. Calm that comes too early leaves you unprepared for what lies ahead. Calm that comes after endurance leaves you equipped. In the end, the delay was not cruelty, kindness. It ensured that when peace arrived, you could sustain it. And when storms returned, as they always do, you would not collapse. You would stand, speak, and move with authority born from patience, forged in pressure, and secured through trust. Private obedience produces public peace. What looks effortless on the outside is almost always sustained by unseen discipline on the inside. Peace that is visible, stable, lasting is rarely the result of luck or favorable circumstances. It is the fruit of choices made when no one was watching. Decisions to obey quietly, consistently, and faithfully in private. Most people want public calm without private correction. They desire visible stability while resisting unseen obedience. Peace does not begin in public spaces. It is cultivated in private moments. What you practice alone eventually shapes how you stand before others. When your inner life is ordered, your outer world reflects that order. Private obedience is where integrity is formed. It is where you choose alignment over convenience, restraint over impulse, and faithfulness over shortcuts. These choices may seem small, but they are cumulative. Over time, they create an internal environment where chaos cannot easily take root. Public peace is simply the external expression of internal order. There is a difference between appearing calm and being anchored in peace. Appearances can be maintained temporarily, but true peace endures pressure. Endurance is developed privately. When you obey principles consistently, especially when it costs you, you strengthen your ability to remain steady under stress. This steadiness becomes visible when challenges arise publicly. Private obedience trains you to respond instead of react. When you discipline your thoughts, your habits, and your emotions in private, you are less likely to be shaken in public. You do not need to defend yourself constantly. You do not need to prove your worth. You are not easily provoked. This composure is not accidental, it is practiced. Public peace also carries authority. People are drawn to those who remain calm in chaotic environments. That calm is not passive, it is confident. It signals that you have done the internal work. You are not scrambling for control because you have learned surrender. You are not anxious for approval because your foundation is secure. This authority cannot be manufactured. It is earned privately. Private obedience often feels unrewarded because it lacks immediate recognition. Applause follows the disciplined decision. No affirmation accompanies the quiet sacrifice. But obedience is never wasted. Builds a reservoir of strength that is drawn upon when public pressure arises. When storms hit, those without private discipline are exposed. Those with it are sustained. Peace in public settings is not about avoiding conflict. It is about maintaining clarity within it. Private obedience sharpens discernment. You learn when to speak and when to remain silent, when to act and when to wait. This discernment prevents unnecessary turmoil. Many public crises are the result of private neglect. When private obedience is lacking, public peace becomes fragile. It depends on external validation, favorable outcomes, or controlled environments. Any disruption threatens it. When obedience is consistent, peace becomes resilient. It does not disappear when plans change or when criticism arises. It is rooted deeper than circumstance. Private obedience also protects relationships. When you choose honesty, humility, and restraint in private, you carry those qualities into public interactions. You are less reactive, less defensive, and more patient. This creates healthier dynamics and reduces conflict. Peace spreads outward because it is first established inward. There is also a timing aspect to private obedience. It teaches patience. You learn to trust processes instead of rushing results. This patience becomes visible when others panic. You remain composed because you are accustomed to waiting without losing hope. Public peace often looks like confidence, but it is actually practiced patience. Many people try to fix public chaos with public solutions, ignoring the private roots of the problem. But lasting peace cannot be imposed externally. It must be cultivated internally. Private obedience addresses the source, not just the symptoms. It corrects misalignment before it becomes visible disorder. Private obedience is not about perfection. It is about consistency. It is choosing alignment daily, even when motivation is low. Over time, these consistent choices shape character. Character is what holds you steady when pressure increases. Character is what allows peace to remain when circumstances fluctuate. Public peace is not the absence of challenges, it is the presence of stability within them. That stability is built privately. When you have faced yourself honestly, disciplined your impulses, and aligned your actions with your values, External chaos loses its power to unsettle you. Eventually, people notice. They may not know your private battles, but they see your public composure. They see how you navigate stress, as how you speak under pressure, how you respond to setbacks. What they are witnessing is the fruit of private obedience. The end, private obedience produces public peace because order always precedes calm. When your inner life is aligned, your outer world reflects that alignment. Peace becomes not something you chase, but something you carry. And that peace, born in private, becomes a steady presence in public, unshaken, enduring, quietly powerful. Storms lose access when discipline shuts the door. Chaos does not enter randomly, it looks for openings. Turmoil searches for patterns, weaknesses, and inconsistencies it can exploit. When life feels repeatedly unsettled, it is often not because storms are powerful, because access has been left unguarded. Discipline is the gatekeeper. When discipline is established, storm may still exist, but they can no longer enter freely. Discipline creates boundaries, and boundaries determine what is allowed to stay. Without boundaries, everything has permission. Stress moves in, confusion takes up residence, and instability becomes familiar. Discipline, however, defines limits. It says no to what disrupts peace and yes to what sustains growth. When discipline is absent, storms do not need force. They simply walk in. Many storms return not because they were never defeated, but because the door was reopened. Old habits, unmanaged emotions, undisciplined choices become invitations. Discipline closes these doors quietly and consistently. It does not argue with chaos. It starves it of access. Time, storms that once lingered begin to fade because there is nowhere left for them to operate. Discipline is often misunderstood as restriction, but it is actually protection. It guards your time, your energy, and your focus. When these areas are unmanaged, storms thrive. Fatigue invites poor decisions. Distraction invites delay. Emotional neglect invites overreaction. Discipline addresses these vulnerabilities before they become entry points. Storms also feed on inconsistency. When actions contradict intentions, instability increases. Discipline brings alignment between what you say and what you do. This alignment weakens chaos. Storms lose their leverage when your life becomes predictable in principle, even if circumstances are unpredictable. Discipline shuts the door through daily choices. It is choosing structure over impulse, order over comfort, and intention over reaction. These choices may seem small, but they are cumulative. Each disciplined decision reinforces the boundary. Each undisciplined choice weakens it. Storms pay attention to patterns, not intentions. When discipline is established, storms encounter resistance, not dramatic resistance, but steady resistance. The kind that does not panic, does not rush, and does not overreact. This steadiness confuses chaos. Storms rely on emotional volatility. Discipline replaces volatility with consistency. Discipline also teaches you how to recognize access points. You become aware of what drains you, what distracts you, and what destabilizes you. This awareness allows you to intervene early. Instead of managing full-blown storms, you close the door at the first sign of imbalance. Many people try to pray storms away without changing the conditions that invite them. Prayer without discipline often produces temporary relief. Discipline sustains what prayer initiates. When discipline becomes a lifestyle, storms find unfamiliar territory. They do not recognize the environment and cannot adapt. Discipline also builds authority. When you consistently govern yourself, you gain confidence in your ability to handle pressure. This confidence reduces fear, and fear is often the door storms use. When fear diminishes, storms lose momentum. Storms lose access when your life becomes ordered. Order does not eliminate challenges, but it reduces chaos. You still face difficulties. They do not overwhelm you. They come and go without settling in. Discipline ensures that challenges remain visitors, not residents. This process is gradual. Discipline does not shut the door all at once. It closes it daily. Over time, the environment changes. What once felt normal no longer fits. Chaos feels out of place. Peace becomes familiar. When discipline shuts the door, storms are forced to move on. They have no assignment where there is order. They exist to correct, expose, or train. Once discipline is established, their purpose is fulfilled. In the end, storms are not defeated by force, by structure. Discipline provides that structure. It quietly, steadily, and effectively removes access. And when access is gone, storms have no choice but to leave. Habits can invite what prayers try to remove. Many people spend hours in prayer asking for breakthrough, deliverance, and transformation, yet continue to live in ways that reinforce the very circumstances they are petitioning heaven to change. Prayer is powerful. It aligns your heart with God and opens doors to divine intervention, but habits determine whether that intervention has anywhere to land. Habits contradict your prayers remain unfulfilled or temporary, and the storms you are begging to end continue to linger. Habits are the invisible architecture of your life. They create the patterns that govern your thoughts, emotions, decisions, and actions. When these patterns are disordered, they create vulnerability. A prayer may call for peace, but a habit of complaining, procrastination, distraction undermines it. A prayer may ask for favor, but habits of dishonesty, negligence, or bitterness block its flow. Storms, challenges, setbacks often persist, not because God is silent, but because habits keep the door open. Many people mistake spiritual activity for spiritual progress. They believe that the act of praying, fasting, or attending meetings alone will remove obstacles. But without the accompanying alignment in habits, these spiritual exercises are like pouring water into a cracked vessel. It leaks out, leaving the structure weak. You cannot outpray patterns you refuse to correct. A prayer for patience will fail if the habit of anger persists. Prayer for financial increase will struggle if the habit of overspending continues. A prayer for healthy relationships cannot flourish while habits of gossip, neglect, or pride remain unaddressed. Habits are often subtle, disguised as convenience, comfort, or even necessity. They do not always appear harmful at first glance, but over time they shape your environment and influence your outcomes. Small, repeated behaviors compound into significant consequences. A habit of lateness may seem trivial, but it invites missed opportunities. A habit of speaking carelessly may seem minor, but it invites conflict. A habit of fear or indecision may seem harmless, but it invites stagnation. While prayers call for victory, habits often call for repetition of defeat. The problem is not the prayer, it is the misalignment. God hears every cry. Heaven respects order. When your life is misaligned, when your daily patterns contradict your prayers, the answer cannot fully manifest. Prayer without habit reform is like planting seeds in infertile soil. You may water it, you may speak life over it. The ground is unprepared to sustain the growth. Habits prepare the soil. Habits determine whether the breakthrough takes root. Habits also determine the speed of answered prayers. You may pray fervently for freedom from anxiety, yet habits of negative self-talk, overthinking, and procrastination extend the season of struggle. You may pray for financial provision, yet habits of poor money management keep the blessing delayed. You may pray for clarity in relationships, yet habits of avoidance, dishonesty, or inconsistency invite repeated conflict. In every case, prayer and habit must align for the breakthrough to manifest fully. The key principle is this: consistent, godly habits amplify prayer. Disobedient or careless habits nullify its impact. Prayer moves the spiritual forces of heaven, but habits govern the physical, mental, and emotional landscape where these forces operate. Without a disciplined approach to daily life, prayers remain aspirational rather than transformative. Each day provides a choice, either to cultivate habits that invite blessings or habits that invite the persistence of storms. This is why reflection and self-assessment are critical. Ask yourself, which habits reinforce the problems I pray against? Which patterns keep me trapped in the cycles I wish to break? Honest examination is not condemnation, it is empowerment. Once you identify the habits that are incompatible with your prayers, you can take deliberate steps to replace them with new, constructive routines. Each intentional adjustment strengthens the alignment between your words and your life. Developing godly habits requires consistency, discipline, and humility. Demands that you make choices when no one is watching. Choices that may be uncomfortable, inconvenient, or contrary to immediate desires. True transformation happens in the private decisions of daily life, not only in public displays of spirituality. Habits are forged quietly, repeatedly, and often without recognition, yet they are the very mechanisms that allow prayers to materialize. Habits also shape your responses under pressure. When a storm arises, your habits dictate whether you panic, complain, or persevere. A habit of resilience allows you to endure and act wisely. A habit of faithfulness allows you to maintain trust and obedience. Habits form the behavioral foundation upon which answered prayers can manifest in real, tangible ways. Without them, prayers remain theoretical and abstract, unable to penetrate the practical circumstances of life. Another critical truth is that habits influence not just personal outcomes, but relational and environmental ones as well. If you maintain habits of negativity, criticism, or selfishness, you affect those around you, creating a landscape that resists peace and growth. Even if your prayers are pure, the environment shaped by habitual behavior can block blessings. Public peace, productivity, and success are all extensions of the habits cultivated privately. Ultimately, the alignment of prayer and habit produces lasting transformation. Prayer brings divine instruction, intervention, and empowerment. Habits create the human framework that sustains and enforces that change. When prayers and habits are in harmony, progress is accelerated. The storms that linger are dissipated. The doors that seem closed open. Peace, prosperity, and purpose are not only promised, they are realized. If you desire your prayers to be effective, start by examining your daily routines, your thought patterns, and your behavioral tendencies. Identify habits that undermine your petitions and replace them with intentional practices that reinforce them. Discipline yourself in small, consistent ways, because these small adjustments accumulate into a structure strong enough to support answered prayers. Remember, it is not enough to cry out for change. Change requires consistent action aligned with those cries. Habits either invite the storm to remain or allow the blessing to take root. If you are serious about transformation, the work of habit must accompany the work of prayer. Otherwise, you may find yourself repeating the same patterns, asking for the same breakthroughs, and wondering why the results never last. Habits can invite what prayers try to remove. They can open doors to the very difficulties you are petitioning heaven to resolve. But the reverse is also true discipline, intentional. Godly habits can sustain every prayer, amplify every blessing, and close the doors that storms seek to enter. The alignment of prayer and habit is not optional, it is essential. And when you cultivate it, your life begins to experience the fullness of transformation that God intends. Discipline matures discernment and spiritual control. It is one thing to have knowledge of right and wrong. It is another to consistently apply that knowledge in real life. Discernment, the ability to perceive what is true, what is helpful, and what is aligned with purpose, cannot be fully developed in chaos or inconsistency. It grows when discipline is exercised daily, when choices are made carefully, and when obedience is prioritized over convenience. Discipline is the soil in which discernment takes root, and without it, spiritual understanding remains shallow, vulnerable, and unreliable. Discernment is not simply knowing what to do in theory. It is the ability to navigate complex circumstances, to recognize opportunities and threats, to respond in alignment with wisdom. Spiritual control, similarly, is not about suppressing emotions or forcing behavior. It is the capacity to govern your inner life regardless of external circumstances. Both discernment and spiritual control are cultivated over time through the practice of disciplined living. When discipline becomes habitual, forms an internal framework that guides decisions, reactions, and priorities. The first way discipline matures discernment is by training the mind to recognize patterns. Without structure, it is easy to be swayed by emotion, opinion, circumstance. Repeated disciplined action creates experience, and experience illuminates truth. Those who are disciplined in prayer, study, reflection, action, begin to perceive subtle signals that others miss. They recognize the motivations behind actions, the potential consequences of decisions, the spiritual realities underlying visible circumstances. This clarity is discernment, and it is impossible without consistent discipline. Discipline also sharpens judgment by reinforcing patience. Many people rush decisions, driven by impulse or desire for immediate results. Rushed choices rarely reflect wisdom. But when a disciplined person practices restraint, waiting before responding, analyzing before acting, they develop the capacity to judge situations accurately. Over time, patience becomes second nature. Discernment becomes instinctive. What once required deliberate thought now flows naturally because the mind has been trained to respond rather than react. Spiritual control emerges hand in hand with discernment. A person who is disciplined in their habits, daily prayer, meditation, ethical consistency, accountability, and intentional reflection gradually learns to regulate emotions, desires, and impulses. Spiritual control is evident in someone who does not lose peace when confronted with provocation, who does not compromise integrity for convenience, who does not allow fear, anger, or confusion to dictate behavior. Discipline develops the internal boundaries that give spiritual authority the room to operate. Repeated obedience is central to this maturation process. Every choice to act with consistency strengthens discernment. Every moment of restraint teaches control. Every instance of aligning actions with principles, especially when difficult, reinforces the inner architecture of judgment and self-governance. Without these repeated exercises, understanding remains theoretical. True discernment and control are practical abilities forged in the practice of disciplined living. Discernment requires exposure to testing. Life will challenge beliefs, values, and priorities. Without discipline, those challenges become destructive, leading to confusion, regret, or compromise. With discipline, they become developmental, sharpening the ability to distinguish between what is temporary and what is essential, between what is morally right and expedient, between what aligns with purpose and what detracts from it. The more disciplined a person is, the less reactive they become to superficial pressures, the more capable they are of perceiving deeper realities. Discipline also fosters consistency. Consistency creates predictability in thought, behavior, decision-making, which allows discernment to function reliably. When the mind, heart, and spirit are unregulated, discernment is sporadic. Insight appears intermittently, often under stress or after mistakes. Discipline ensures that discernment is steady, that spiritual control is resilient, and that authority in decision-making is rooted in habituated wisdom rather than chance or emotion. Another important aspect is the development of self-awareness. Discipline forces reflection. When one commits to self-examination, to assessing decisions, reactions, and tendencies, awareness grows. This self-awareness is the foundation of discernment and it enables a person to distinguish between personal biases and objective truth. It also reinforces spiritual control by identifying triggers and vulnerabilities, allowing preemptive management instead of reactive responses. Discipline becomes a laboratory in which self-knowledge is tested and refined. Discipline also protects against deception, both internal and external. Without control and discernment, a person is easily swayed by false promises, misleading opinions, and manipulative influences. Spiritual control allows for measured responses, ensuring that external pressures do not dictate internal peace. Discernment identifies truth amidst complexity. Discipline sustains both by enforcing habits of reflection, accountability, and ethical consistency. Together, they form a shield that enables clear perception and measured action. The maturation process is gradual. Discernment and spiritual control are not instantaneous outcomes. They are cultivated through repetition, reflection, and refinement. Each disciplined action, whether it is the choice to remain truthful when lying is easier, to forgive when resentment feels justified, to act with patience when frustration builds, serves as training. Over time, the individual begins to operate from a foundation of understanding rather than reaction. Spiritual control becomes second nature, and discernment becomes intuitive. It is also important to recognize that discipline sharpens both timing and perspective. Discernment is not only about knowing what is right, it is about knowing when and how to act. Spiritual control is not only about restraint, it is about direction. Disciplined person learns to wait for the proper moment to intervene, to speak, or to decide. This careful timing is a direct result of habits of preparation, reflection, and obedience. Without discipline, impulses dictate action, and insight is wasted or misapplied. Ultimately, discipline transforms knowledge into wisdom. Many people possess information, awareness, spiritual insight, but lack the ability to translate it into life-altering action. Discipline bridges that gap. It trains the mind, shapes the spirit, and regulates the heart. It produces an internal environment where discernment thrives and spiritual control is sustained, even in the midst of stress, chaos, opposition. In practical terms, the disciplined life manifests in a person who can navigate adversity without panic, lead without coercion, make decisions that align with long-term purpose rather than short-term convenience. It is reflected in calm speech during conflict, steady judgment in ambiguous circumstances, and thoughtful action when pressure is high. Others may be swayed by circumstance. The disciplined person remains anchored, demonstrating authority rooted in internal order rather than external approval. Discipline matures discernment and spiritual control because it cultivates the conditions necessary for them to develop. Without structured habits, repeated obedience, and intentional self-governance, discernment remains theoretical and spiritual control remains aspirational. With discipline, become operative and reliable, equipping the individual to navigate life's storms with clarity, composure, and authority. Person who embraces discipline is not merely reactive to life, they are proactive in shaping their perception, responses, and decisions. Storms may still arise, temptations may still challenge, and pressures may still increase, but discernment enables understanding of what matters. Spiritual control allows measured, deliberate responses. This combination produces influence, stability, and maturity. In the end, discipline is the foundation upon which discernment and spiritual control are built. It transforms knowledge into applied wisdom, insight into action, understanding into authority. Those who practice disciplined living gradually cultivate a life in which judgment is sound, control is steady, decisions reflect both spiritual maturity and practical awareness. It is in this disciplined cultivation that the storms of life are navigated with grace, clarity, and effectiveness. Storms expire when their assignment is completed. Life often presents challenges that feel relentless, as if the storms surrounding you are determined to stay indefinitely. Yet, the truth is that no storm lasts longer than its intended purpose. Every season of pressure, every trial, every wave of difficulty carries a specific assignment. It comes with a lesson to teach, a strength to build, boundary to establish. Once that objective is fulfilled, the storm loses its authority to remain. Understanding this principle transforms the way we perceive difficulty and equips us to endure it with purpose rather than despair. Every storm is sent to punish you. Some storms are sent to perfect you. They arrive not to break you, to develop capacities that comfort and ease could never produce. Some storms push you to confront hidden weaknesses, to correct misalignment, to build resilience. They expose what has been neglected, challenge what has been taken for granted, and refine what is vital. The moment the intended refinement or revelation is complete, the storm has no reason to continue. It expires naturally, like a tidal wave retreating after reshaping the shore. Storms are often misunderstood because their duration is perceived as cruelty rather than instruction. When challenges persist, many people assume they are under attack or forgotten by providence. Yet, the length of the storm is not arbitrary. It is connected to the completion of its assignment. Some storms are brief but intense, designed to produce immediate insight. Others are prolonged, teaching patience, endurance, and perseverance. The key is to recognize the purpose embedded within the storm rather than simply wishing it away. Understanding that storms have assignments changes the approach to life's challenges. Instead of wasting energy on fear, complaint, or avoidance, a person can focus on the lesson, the growth, and the preparation that the storm demands. Patience becomes strategic rather than passive. Persistence becomes empowered rather than desperate. Faith becomes active rather than anxious. When you see difficulty as a mission rather than merely an obstacle, you stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and start asking, "What is this season forming in me?" Each storm is precise in its design. Some are meant to teach endurance, to show you how long you can stand firm without wavering. Others are meant to reveal strength, to demonstrate capabilities that only appear under pressure. Some are meant to uncover weakness, so it can be corrected before it causes greater damage in the future. Still others are meant to separate, to remove distractions, unhelpful relationships, false dependencies from your life. Every storm has a reason, and every reason carries an expiration date. Many people fail to see the expiration because they focus solely on the intensity rather than the assignment. They see only the waves crashing, the winds howling, and the darkness of the clouds. They measure the storm by discomfort rather than by the lessons completed. Storms do not exist to punish. They exist to educate, refine, and prepare. When the intended objective is met, the storm naturally dissipates and clarity, stability, and peace return. The expiration of a storm is also closely tied to personal growth. Storms often persist until the individual reaches a level of maturity sufficient to handle what lies ahead. Person may face repeated challenges in the same area until they develop the wisdom, discipline, or endurance needed to rise above them permanently. For example, financial storms may continue until stewardship and discipline are mastered. Relational storms may linger until boundaries and communication improve. Emotional storms may endure until resilience and self-control are strengthened. The storm exits only when the purpose of its lesson has been realized. A storm that has fulfilled its assignment often leaves visible signs of growth. Strength is revealed in the endurance it has cultivated. Clarity is revealed in the insights gained from the struggle. Wisdom is revealed in the decisions made under pressure. Resilience is revealed in the ability to withstand similar trials in the future. The storm's legacy is the transformation it produces, and once that transformation is achieved, the storm no longer has authority over the life it touched. Another principle is that storms are finite by design. Even the most overwhelming circumstances have a conclusion. Nature itself teaches this. The most violent hurricanes and floods eventually recede. Seasons of drought give way to rain. Darkness yields to light. This principle applies to the storms of life as well. Every challenge has a timeline. An understanding that the storm is temporary, tied to a specific assignment, provides hope and endurance in the midst of pressure. Patience in the storm is essential. Many give up just before the storm's purpose is fulfilled. They stop investing in personal growth, stop pursuing wisdom, or stop applying the lessons available in the difficulty. But the storm cannot continue indefinitely. It is constrained by divine design, natural law, completion of its intended task. Waiting does not mean stagnation. It means persistence in alignment with the principle that storms expire when their work is done. Faith plays a crucial role in navigating storms. Believing that every storm has a purpose and an expiration helps maintain focus and composure. It allows individuals to act intentionally, to adjust habits, to make choices that align with the lesson being taught. Without faith, storms are endured with fear and frustration. With faith, they become classrooms of opportunity, preparing the individual for the next level of life. Moreover, storms expire when accountability is met. Often, the lesson within a storm requires not only endurance, but also correction. Habits must be adjusted, behaviors modified, and perspectives refined. Till these alignments occur, the storm continues. Once the necessary changes are made and the assignment fulfilled, the storm loses its leverage. It cannot stay beyond the purpose it was sent to accomplish. It is also important to recognize that storms are not always removed by force. Attempting to resist, control, or escape a storm without completing its assignment often prolongs it. The storm does not yield to pressure. It yields to purpose. The wiser approach is to cooperate with the process, extract the lessons, and allow personal growth to align with the objectives embedded in the challenge. Discipline, patience, and reflection accelerate the fulfillment of the storm's assignment and therefore its expiration. Finally, understanding this principle transforms perspective on life. Rather than resenting challenges, individuals can approach them with a mindset of learning and growth. Each storm becomes a stepping stone rather than a stumbling block. Each trial, each difficulty, each season of testing is recognized as a temporary phase with a defined purpose. When that purpose is realized, the storm ceases, leaving behind strength, wisdom, and clarity. In conclusion, storms expire when their assignment is completed. They are finite, purposeful, designed to produce transformation. They test endurance, refine character, reveal weaknesses, and strengthen resilience. The discomfort is temporary. The lessons are permanent. By aligning with the principles embedded in the storm, practicing patience, discipline, and faith, and completing the objectives assigned, one ensures that the storm's authority ends and that peace, clarity, and growth take its place. Every storm has a timeline, and when the assignment is fulfilled, it naturally, inevitably, and permanently passes. Disciplined believers carry peace through chaos in 2026. The coming season will be filled with unprecedented challenges, distractions, and pressures. But those who have cultivated discipline will move through turmoil with steadiness that astonishes others. Discipline is the internal framework that allows believers to maintain composure, clarity, and focus when the world around them is unstable. It is the invisible strength that produces visible calm. In a year like 2026, when uncertainty and upheaval are likely to increase, discipline becomes the defining factor between chaos controlling your life and peace governing your spirit. Chaos is inevitable, does not always follow plans. Circumstances often shift unexpectedly, and external pressures will rise. For the undisciplined, these changes bring panic, confusion, and reactive behavior. But discipline equips believers to respond intentionally. It teaches consistency over convenience, obedience over impulse, focus over distraction. When discipline is practiced privately, it translates into resilience publicly. In other words, peace is not a product of perfect circumstances. It is the result of disciplined preparation. Believers who cultivate discipline understand that peace is a choice, not a feeling. Chaos may provoke fear, anger, or frustration, but discipline trains the mind and spirit to remain steady. It teaches the believer to prioritize long-term vision over short-term discomfort. Where undisciplined hearts react to every shift in circumstance, disciplined believers respond with measured actions rooted in faith, principle, and purpose. Peace becomes a stabilizing force for themselves and others. Discipline develops spiritual endurance. Endurance allows believers to remain faithful when immediate results are absent, to persist when circumstances seem unfavorable, to maintain integrity when shortcuts or compromise seem easier. The chaos of 2026 may tempt impatience, distraction, or compromise. Disciplined believers are able to navigate storms with calm confidence. Peace emerges not because the external environment has changed, because the internal structure has been fortified. Another vital aspect of discipline is focus. In chaotic times, attention is easily pulled in multiple directions. News cycles, social pressures, financial uncertainties, relational tensions can overwhelm even the strongest minds. Discipline sharpens focus, allowing believers to prioritize what is important over what is urgent, filters distractions, channels energy productively, and protects time for reflection, prayer, and purposeful action. This focused approach ensures that chaos cannot dominate the mind or the spirit. Discipline also strengthens spiritual authority. Authority is not derived solely from position or influence. It is developed through consistent obedience, integrity, and wisdom under pressure. The believer who has disciplined thought patterns, speech, and actions carries an aura of steadiness that others instinctively recognize. In times of turmoil, this authority inspires confidence and trust, enabling the disciplined believer to lead without panic, guide without fear, and respond without haste. Peace carried through chaos is not passive, it is active. It is the result of deliberate choices made moment by moment. The disciplined believer chooses prayer over anxiety, reflection over reaction, and action over avoidance. Each choice reinforces internal stability, creating a buffer against the turbulence of life. Over time, these choices compound, producing a sustained capacity for peace that becomes almost unshakable, even in the most challenging seasons. Discipline also enhances discernment, which is critical in chaotic times. When confusion, misinformation, and emotional volatility are rampant, the ability to perceive truth accurately and make wise decisions is invaluable. Discipline forms the habit of careful observation, deliberate thinking, and reliance on divine guidance. This discernment allows believers to navigate chaos strategically rather than being swept along by its currents. Decisions become measured and intentional, reactive or fear-driven. Furthermore, disciplined believers influence others through their peace. In 2026, as many encounter uncertainty and fear, calm presence of those who have trained themselves in discipline becomes a stabilizing force. People are drawn to steadiness, Consistent behavior of disciplined believers serves as an example, creating a ripple effect of calm. In this way, discipline not only protects the believer, but also strengthens communities, organizations, and relationships during turbulent times. Faith and discipline are intertwined in carrying peace through chaos. Faith provides trust in God's sovereignty and purpose, while discipline ensures that trust is consistently expressed through obedience, prayer, and reflection. Without faith, discipline can become rigid or mechanical. Without discipline, faith may become reactive or inconsistent. Together, they create a spiritual equilibrium that allows believers to remain anchored regardless of external turmoil. In addition, discipline builds resilience to recurring challenges. Life does not bring chaos in neat, isolated packages. Storms often return in cycles. Challenges may repeat in similar forms. Disciplined believers are prepared for this pattern. Habits of spiritual exercise, intentional reflection, measured response create a resilience that allows them to endure repeated pressures without being shaken. Peace is maintained because the believer has internal systems in place to respond effectively every time the storm arises. Practical outworking of this principle is visible in behavior and influence. Disciplined believers maintain composure in conversations that provoke anger, calm in decisions that involve high stakes, and consistency in responsibilities that demand endurance. Their language, tone, and demeanor remain steady, inspiring confidence and reducing panic in others. They are not swayed by hype rumor or emotional contagion. Peace becomes a visible presence because discipline shapes internal response into outward action. Moreover, discipline enables the believer to act decisively in chaos. While confusion and indecision are common during uncertain seasons, disciplined believers are able to evaluate situations, identify priorities, and take appropriate steps with clarity. Decision-making is not rushed or fearful. It is intentional and purposeful. This decisiveness ensures that opportunities are seized, dangers are avoided, believers' life remains on course despite external turbulence. Carrying peace through chaos also requires self-control, a fruit of discipline. Emotional impulses can magnify chaos if left unchecked. Discipline strengthens the capacity to manage reactions, moderate anger, and resist impulsive decisions. The more consistent the discipline, the less reactive the individual becomes, and the more capable they are of maintaining peace under pressure. Emotional regulation becomes second nature, producing stability that others can rely upon. Finally, disciplined believers understand that peace is cultivated daily, not only in moments of crisis. Habits of study, reflection, prayer, healthy routines, ethical consistency prepare the spirit and mind for times of trial. This preparation ensures that when chaos arises, meet someone who is already equipped internally. The storms of 2026, no matter how fierce, cannot destabilize the foundation built through consistent discipline. In conclusion, disciplined believers carry peace through chaos in 2026 because their internal life is structured, aligned, and fortified. Discipline strengthens focus, patience, spiritual authority, discernment, and emotional control. It transforms faith into consistent action, enabling believers to navigate uncertainty with clarity and composure. Peace is not the absence of challenge, but the presence of structure and intentionality cultivated through disciplined habits. As chaos surrounds the world, disciplined believers remain anchored, calm, and influential, demonstrating that the life of order, obedience, preparation enables tranquility even in the most turbulent seasons.